Hi everyone, MakerSteve81 here, and today in this short video tutorial I'm going to show you how to make more realistic looking bullets for your cosplay and prop needs. And we're going to use these as the basis, and these are toy bullets from a matching pistol, which I'm going to show you in another video in the near future. But if you go on eBay and you type in Toy Colt 1911 and scroll down some of the listings, you'll find along with the actual pistol, some of the sellers are selling packs of 20 of these separately for about $4.99, and these make a really good basis for making a realistic looking 45 caliber shell. So if we take these out of the packet and have a little look at them. So although these make relatively good analog stand-ins for a 45 caliber shell, we do need to make a couple of modifications in order to make it look even more realistic. Now, looking at the side profile, you can see that it's just straight down the side there, and what you would have, and I'll show you a picture on screen, is you would have a chamfer or a taper cut here in between the lip and the main body of the casing. And that's what the real firearm will use in order to load and extract the shell casing out of the chamber, and we haven't got this on this kind of plastic bullet. We do have a kind of indent there which would represent the primer cap in the bottom, so that's nice, but we do need to do a little bit of work to this to make it look even more realistic still. So let me talk you through the steps. So the first thing we need to do is split this down into its three component parts. So we have a relatively kind of hard rubber bullet tip, then we have the shell casing, and then the base of the case that contains the primer cap, that's also a separate piece. So we need to split these down. Now you can try pulling these apart, and in some cases you can. It's very, very tough, but in some cases you can get the bullet heads to separate. What you find easier is just stretching out a little bit like that, taking a pair of flush cutters and putting them in between the bullet head and the case, and then we just make a snip, and there we go, we've got the three parts separated. What we're going to do to create the realistic looking chamfer on the base of the shell is we're going to take our power drill here and we're going to turn it into a lathe. So the first thing we need to do is just clip a little bit off the sprue here of this bottom part of the casing. Then what we're going to do is we're going to open the chuck on our power drill. I'm going to pop that in and tighten that up. So with the bottom of the casing positioned in our drill here, we're going to take a sharp craft knife. We don't need to extend it all the way, we only need a little bit of the blade. And then what we're going to do, very carefully, make sure you don't get your hand caught on the chuck, we're going to put the blade in at a 45-degree angle like this, and we are going to cut a chamfer into the bottom of this shell casing or the lip here of the cartridge. So here we go. And that should leave us something that looks a little bit like this. So if I remove that from the drill, and we'll just pop this back into the cartridge case, you'll see now we've got a little bit of a lip, which is a bit more of an accurate representation of what an actual bullet casing looks like. Now we need to do a very similar thing on the actual case itself, because we've got quite a sharp step there between this bottom piece and the actual shell casing. So in order to do this, what I found is a bit of plastic tube which with a little bit of masking tape on it to give it some grip, quite tightly fitted on nicely, and I can put this in the chuck of the drill and I can do the same thing again. Okay, so let's just see what that looks like. There you go. That doesn't look too bad. So whilst I've got this in the drill, I'm just going to run a sanding sponge over it, because we need to roughen this up so that the paint will stick to it better. We also need to roughen up the head of the bullet as well, again with a sanding sponge, just to make sure that the paint will stick. So now what we can do is we can get rid of this sprue. We no longer need that. So the next thing to do now is glue these two parts of the shell casing together, ready for priming and painting. I should just twist them together, put them in, and then I've got a little bit of the instant set spray. I'll spray that down on the inside, and that should seep in. Okay, so there is the shell casing ready for priming and painting. What I found is that 2 lollipop sticks seem to work quite nicely for holding it, so that will make it nice and easy to spray some primer on. And for the bullet head, I found a nice little plastic tube that fits on quite well as well. So I'm going to spray these now with black spray paint. When you're painting in metallic colours, which obviously we're going to be, because we're going to be using brass for the casing and copper for the head of the bullet, if you prime with black, you get much better results when painting with metallic colours. So let's go get those primed. So here are the component parts now primed with some black spray paint, and now it's on to the final painting. I'm going to be using my preferred paints of choice, which are the AK Interactive True Metal series. So I've got a copper and I've got a brass. And the really good thing about these paints is they're a kind of a wax-based paint. And once they're dry, you can polish them to a realistic metallic finish. We'll start with the brass, and these tubes are a little bit like oil paint tubes. And you don't need very much. So I've got my shell casing here, and with a kind of medium-sized soft flat brush, I'll pick some of this brass colour up and just start to apply it. And so that was done, and it's already looking pretty shiny, but it's going to look even better once we polish that up. Okay, so we'll move on to the bullet heads now, and this will be using the copper colour. Again, I'm going in sideways brush strokes, and just kind of moving the brush around to try and minimise the appearance of any of those brush strokes. Now when it comes to letting this dry properly before we give it a polish, you should really give it probably about 4 to 6 hours for this to dry thoroughly. It is a wax based paint, although if you have the means to do so, cheat. Okay, so I've sped up the drying process by using a hairdryer, and we can now get on to the polishing. So in order to do this, all you need is a piece of cloth or kitchen towel, and then we are going to very gently buff the cartridge case with the kitchen towel, and that should give it a nice metallic shine. Look at that, super shiny. Looking good, looking pretty good. Okay, let's try with one of the bullet heads I painted. Now I'm not quite sure, and as you can see if you look at the cloth, you haven't really got much of the materials come off there. I'm not quite sure whether these are going to work or whether these are going to need a second coat. Yeah, it does look like some of the copper is actually coming off, more so than we wanted. Okay, so it looks like quite a lot of the copper is rubbing off there, so we're going to need to put a second coat on. So it looks like the paint doesn't want to stick as well to the bullet heads, the rubber bullet heads, than it does to the hard plastic cartridge cases. So I'm not going to polish the bullet heads, I'm going to leave them as they are, but for both parts, the cartridge case and the bullet head, we're now going to spray it with some clear lacquer. So with the lacquer now dry, the last thing I want to do is just take a dark wash, black, and just put this in some of the crevices and in the base of the primer, and then wipe that clean just to give a little bit of contrasting colour. So we can remove the cartridge case now, and we will take one of the bullet heads and gently remove that. Pop them together. And there you have your completed 45 caliber round. Now what you can do is you can glue the bullet heads in with some super glue, or you can just leave them loose and then you can take them out, and then if you want to have an empty cartridge case, then you have got one of those as well. So thanks ever so much for watching. I hope you found this little tutorial useful, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon.